Welcome back to ScarletSprites, everybody. Happy New Year 2020, and on a channel that's largely dedicated to Neo Geo and arcade games, what else could today's video be other than Super Baseball 2020? The future really is now, guys. This game came out almost 30 years ago for Neo Geo, and like other media types such as Blade Runner, we are crossing the point where something that was once set seemingly far into the future, well, we've now arrived at that time in real life. Jesus, I'm getting old. A few things about the cart. You'll notice the label says 2020 Super Baseball as opposed to Super Baseball 2020, as James Roday would say.
I've heard it both ways.
An interesting thing about the cart label, and wow, is that ever a comment for you nerds? This is one of the few originals that contains color. You can see it has this pinkish box on the right side, which is tied to Palace, the developer of the game. The same pink box can be found on their Japanese label for 8-man. I have some of the original box contents that came with this MVS cart, and since we're talking about the pink box, I'll go ahead and show it in English form here on the game's mini marquee. The mini marquee itself is of course used to insert into an MVS arcade machine and is backlit when the game is selected for play. This original is yellowed and slightly cracked like so many of these are, so I have a cleaner reproduction on hand if I want to drop this into my cabinet. I also have the dip switch setting sheet, which basically breaks down the options that an arcade operator could configure when setting up the game. Finally, there are two mini flyers that give a very brief overview of the game. This first actually does a pretty good job showing a breakdown of the field, because as you might suspect, this futuristic take on America's pastime alters the rules just a bit. You can see that you can really only hit a home run by knocking a ball over the fence directly ahead of home plate. Another deviation from the norm is the glass placed over the stands in the pink area. Balls will roll down this glass and drop back onto the playing field if hit there. You'll also note that the foul zone is restructured and does not run a clean line down first and third base. The second mini flyer basically expands on the mini marquee just slightly and gives you a summary of the game's controls. As for the game itself, it's a nice change up from the other two baseball games on Neo Geo, Baseball Stars Professional and Baseball Stars 2. While the latter is maybe my favorite baseball game of all time, it's sometimes fun to cheat on it with something a little different like 2020. Aside from the stadium and rules, perhaps the most apparent difference is that teams consist of both human and robot players. There are a total of 12 teams, 2 of which are all female. Very progressive thinking for us here in 2020. Another change from the more traditional baseball titles is the ability to upgrade your players during a game. This is based on money that you accrue throughout various plays. For example, catching a fly ball for an out will net you $800 and hitting a single, $300. This is then spent on attributes such as hitting, where the larger the boost, which is the sea level upgrades, the larger the amount of cash you'll need to spend. Robots can also be upgraded, but in their case, all 3 attributes, hitting, fielding, and pitching, are upgraded at the same time, making their upgrades the most expensive in the game. If you're wondering if you can lose money, like buying Neo Geo MVS and AES carts, you can. Things like strikeouts or throwing a beanball will cost your bank account. You'll also see that between innings, an umpire will deploy the crackers. If you're concerned this is about to get racial, you can relax. I'm guessing this is maybe a translation issue, as the game is referring to the placement of landmines across the field. Obviously, you don't want to step on these while fielding. Overall, like I've hinted, this game is a nice change of pace if you're wanting something different to play on the Neo Geo. While Baseball Stars 2 will always hold the top spot in my heart, I do enjoy the charm that Super Baseball 2020 brings to SNK's arcade lineup. Although nothing overly fancy, I do like the graphics and presentation, and I think that they are largely on par with what you can expect from a title released in 1991. There are some cool cinematic sequences that will even run for plays that the game deems as close calls. On a final note, if you don't have access to the Neo Geo cart, a means to emulate, or MiSTer, you can get a taste of this game by playing its port on either Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis. And yes, this game was a cheesy way for me to ring in the new year on the channel. I can imagine that I'm probably one of 100 people who thought to tie this title into a video today, but come on, you know that this channel is the one where Neo Geo belongs. That's our thing and what we do here. I do really want to thank everyone for stopping by and continuing to watch and comment. 2019 was a really fun year for this hobby for me, and I'm really not concerned too much with numbers so long as I'm having a good time, but I did have this mental goal to try and get to 5,000, and I closed the year in excess of 6, so that's a big win for me. I also got invited to be a guest at the Cincy Classic and had a few key shoutouts from larger channels that I'm very thankful for, not the least of which was ETA Prime. If 2020 is even half as good as 2019, I'm going to consider that a success. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'm really looking forward to ringing in the new year and spending 2020 with you here on the channel.